And today, wanted to center our exploration around the completion phase, also known as enlightenment. And what is the relationship between enlightenment and the jhanas? I want to get to that. But the Vipassana jhana practice, the goal of the practice is enlightenment in part, clearly seeing the way that, if we clearly see the way things are, that that will lead to enlightenment in this sort of Buddhist frame. Here's Trudy Goodman's way of putting this, using the phases of the moon as a metaphor. And here I'd invite you to think also about the phases of insight. She says, can we appreciate all the phases of the moon, all the stages of our life? Can we see past the patterns of perception that too often eclipse the wonder of being alive? The lunar phases of birth, growth, fullness, then letting go little by little and vanishing into the mysterious darkness. These are the eternal cycles of all life. And I hope you can see now why I wanted to start with that quote, because it's so vast and encompassing. It's like we're talking here about life. That's what meditation is about, actually. And here, this beautiful metaphor of the moon, of the different phases of the moon, the birth of the moon, the start of the new moon, the growth of the moon, coming into fullness, and then the release and letting go back into this darkness. Completion phase is you could say it's the full darkness of enlightenment. And in the early Buddhist tradition, they describe the experience of the completion phase, the kind of apex of this phase, as in that way. They talk about it in terms of something which disappears or vanishes. Kenneth Folk's teacher, Bill Hamilton, he described nirvana in this way. He said, nirvana, which is the experience of the unconditioned, what happens in the completion phase. Nirvana is an experience of the unconditioned, which defies any description. Any description of nirvana is not a description of nirvana, and that's the most that can be said about it. There are no reference points in nirvana on which to base a description. So this is what the practice is leading to. It's leading to an experience of unconditionality that transcends concepts, or it simply means that our concepts cannot capture this experience. You can't say, okay, this is this, and now I understand this, and I can put it into a conceptual category, and I can relate it to everything else, and I see how it is, as a thing, as an object, how it relates to everything else. No, this is not a thing. This is not an experience of something. This is a different kind of experience. Bodhidharma, considered the sort of founder of the Zen tradition in China, described nirvana in a different way that's less negative, but still gets the same point across. He said, when the mind reaches nirvana, you don't see nirvana because the mind is nirvana. If you see nirvana somewhere outside the mind, you're deluding yourself. If you see something outside of your mind and you think it's nirvana, that's a state. I remember talking to my teacher, Kenneth Folk, one day, and we were talking about how common it is for this pattern of people to be teaching meditation, and they're teaching a state. They're teaching people how to get into a particular state, and then are kind of trying to convince themselves and others that everything is okay when they're in this state, and that you can be in this state all the time. And that is not my understanding of what awakening is about. There are these moments of unconditioned, of directly perceiving the unconditional nature of experience. But in the very next moment, we may have to like answer the phone or cook food or do laundry, or, someone needs something from us. And then what do? Like, you can't just hang out in the unconditional space of not knowing when there is a conditional problem that needs your attention. Well, not at first. Not at first. You can't. Eventually, you can integrate these things, but at first they appear to be separate. And we're really trying in the waking up journey in Vipassana Jhana, we're trying to learn how to gradually release identification with these different states, even the really spacious, open, pleasant ones. We're seeing through them. We're realizing, oh, this state is not some fundamental foundational thing that I can just be in and be okay. And it's understandable that we want to be okay. We want to be permanently okay. That's kind of part of what underlies the journey. This sort of more immature part of us, or maybe you could say the baby part of us, that is helpless and needs everything to be okay. Okay, fair. That's part of us. Um, but the adult part of awakening, in my experience, is that a lot of what awakening frees you to do is to be present for your life, including for all the shit that you don't want to be present with. So it's not actually, in some ways, it's like kind of it's not what I signed up for. It's like, okay, I thought I was going to find some kind of super transcendent space where I could be permanently okay. But really, I found that there is no space outside of this. There's just this. And part of this is dealing with all this other stuff. Now, there's good news, though, here. We don't end with the completion phase. The journey continues. Because this is a recursive journey, right? Awakening is a recursive process. Here's a recursive joke for you. In order to understand recursion, you must understand recursion. Okay. Now I see who's laughing here, who the real nerds are. Okay. What the recursive part of awakening? So it's so interesting to me. Because the early Buddhist view, I think, in a way, is like the best you can do is break out of samsara. The best thing you could do is to get out of the conditional into the unconditioned. But how we actually change and grow and learn is not by vanishing into the unconditioned, but rather it's by going through this process over and over again of recursively waking up every morning and going to sleep every night. That the whole phases of the moon happens every single day, not just like over the course of our lifetime. John Vervaeke, philosopher, psychologist, in a series called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, he defined evolution in a way that really struck me. He said evolution is revolution with change. This idea of revolution being just cyclical, revolving over and over again, revolution. When you have a revolution going, like a cycle, phases, say, of insight, phases of the moon, phases of the day, whatever the recursion is, if there's some change as you recurse through these cycles, there's an evolution. There's an actual process of evolving. So to me, this is actually the view that I teach, that I like to teach any meditation from. Like the bigger picture here is we're going to be learning how to work with these recursive cycles of our mind and of life that are built in. But we have the ability in working through these cycles and with these cycles to actually change, and to grow and to learn and to become something new. And I think that's really exciting. And it's not even contradictory with the Buddhist notion of nirvana, of freedom. Once you take that far enough and realize, well, actually, yeah, this is it. This is the realization of the unconditioned. Means that every state that arises, every experience, every sound, every thought, every sight, every person, everything that's coming into being and is being known is it. The idea that there's something else, some other place that we need to get to, is also arising as a thought and as a feeling, FOMO, and as whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, that's it too. This is it too. And that's the realization of the non-dual. And for me, this is where I like, it's like, why are we doing this? Why are we learning how to get into these states and deconstruct these states and release all states? What's the point? um well, the point in part, I think, is to embody the mystery. Here, Reggie Ray, in a book called Touching Enlightenment, he says to be awake, to be enlightened, is to be fully and completely embodied. To be fully and completely embodied means to be at one with who we are in every respect, including our physical being, our emotions, and the totality of our karmic situation. It is to be entirely present to who we are and to the journey of our own becoming. It is to inhabit completely our relative reality with no speck of ourselves left over, no external observer waiting for something else or something better. To me, this is the journey of Vipassana Jhāna. It's the journey toward leaving nothing, having nothing left out of your experience anymore, and to actually be quite intimate with reality. Um, Ultimately, I think it's to realize that this awakening process that we ourselves are in is not limited to us as well, that it's actually a process that everyone's going through, whether they would use that language to describe it or not, that we're all in the journey of life. And good news, bad news are on that journey together. As Martin Luther King famously wrote in the letter from a Birmingham city jail, like which he literally penned in jail: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice anywhere. We're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So to me, the awakening journey, where it ultimately leads, is to the realization that this is a collective process. And at some point, you have to let go of the whole idea of like, I'm on my awakening journey. It's like, no, actually, like, I've been on this journey, and the journey includes everyone and everything. And what awakening really looks like is figuring out how I can be in this situation with my karmic situation and totality of how it is. How can I be, feeling depressed and, feeling suffering and pain over, the suffering of Palestinians, while also showing up? I don't know. I'm trying to do it. Uh, there it is.